How's everyone doing?
Great.
Everyone's mind blown. I think some of you have probably already seen that episode before. Anyone just saw it for the first time? Whoa. So your minds are blown. My name is Dave Carter. I'm from Turner Classic Movies and Entertainment Weekly. And it's such a pleasure for me to be here. Hi. Thank you. Me too. I'm so happy to be here with 5 members of the SAG Award nominated cast of Severance, for Best Ensemble in TV Drama Series. So please help me welcome them. First of all, Jen Tulloch is here. Deachin Lachman is here. Please help me welcome Tramel Tillman. Say hello to Britt Lauer. And please welcome Adam Scott.
Yeah!
Adam Scott, a 2-time SAG Award nominee this year because he's nominated by himself as Best Male Actor in a TV Drama. It's pretty cool. Congratulations to you all on the nominations.
Thank you.
Nominations plural, by the way. Adam, I'm curious to know how this show was explained or pitched to you when you first heard about it. How much of it did they get into in the description initially, and what was your reaction as you kind of read through whatever they would allow you to read the first time?
Right. First of all, thank you everybody for coming tonight. This is really nice. Fellow SAG members, it's a big deal. The first time I heard about it, Ben Stiller called me, and I remember it was January 2017.
Whoa.
And he just kind of gave me the elevator pitch, no pun intended, just like 3 sentences, like the big hook, the big idea of the show, and just said, we're in really early stages, we have nothing for you to read, but just wanted to throw it out there and see if it sounded like something you might be interested in down the road. And of course I was, and also for the next couple years couldn't get that hook, that big idea out of my head. It's such a fun, sticky idea, and it's exactly like my favorite genre growing up. I was a big Twilight Zone fan and stuff. So it sounded exactly like something I would at some point want to do, and it wasn't until 2019, I think, that I read anything. And it was the first couple scripts, and they were terrific. And I remember reading them and just thinking like, oh, this is great. I probably won't get this. Because actors, you kind of end up in that frame of mind. So luckily, down the road, I did eventually get it.
Okay, I'm gonna jump around here. So since this crowd just saw the finale, and like the moment with that photograph is just so ridiculously mind-blowing. At what point in the process were you when you were given the script to episode 109 and saw like, holy shit?
So I did a self-tape, and that led to a Skype with Ben, and he was trying to explain the character. I hadn't read anything. It was just when you get an audition and it's just like these 2 pages and nothing else. So I actually didn't know anything. And then towards the end of the conversation, I think, Ben and I kind of warmed up, and then he very reluctantly told me, the ending. So I found out early on. And it was in a very Ben way, like, well, it's this, and he's like, you know what, I don't know. Anyway, so actually, like, this is what it is. Then for a long time, because of, the whole world shut down, I didn't really see anything. And then when I did get the scripts in late 2020, I just burned through them. I couldn't put them down. And there were many actors in this room, it's so rare that you get to read a full season of television before you go into the role. It almost never happens. It happens more now, but it's still very rare. And I think, I'm not sure about, I think all of us had all the scripts, right? It gives you so much time to prepare, which is such a gift. Because often on network television or, you know, even on streaming, like the scripts just come in like every other week, and then you're like, oh, I didn't know that was gonna happen. Like, I wish I'd known and could have prepared to make like certain choices. So I think we were all really lucky that basically the show we could read in one sitting, right?
Okay, wait. But to get all 9 of these scripts of a 45-minute essentially each episode, that's like 6 or 7 hours of
Yeah.
to read.
I
Wait,
couldn't
Jen,
do it.
what, did you like sit down one day and read the whole
I
thing?
hired someone to read them aloud. I mean, honestly, if that money had been set aside for my student loan. I actually didn't read all of them. They've heard the story 90 times, so sorry guys. But I thought, because Michael Chernus, who plays Rickon, we had a conversation early on about the fact that our characters exist outside of Lumen and thus are not privy to anything going on. In fact, that's sort of the thrust of their entire narrative. So I thought, well, maybe I don't need to know. So I just selectively read, which sounds incredibly narcissistic, and probably in some ways, but I just didn't, I was like, I don't want to know. So there were things, there were twists and plot turns that I didn't know about until I watched it with my friends. It was like, what?
What a brilliant excuse not to have to read the whole
Thank you for blowing my cover.
Britt, in many ways, I feel like Heliar is the closest thing we have to an audience surrogate in this film, right? Because it's new to her too, just like it's new to us. Do you see it that way? And if so, did that affect at all how you played it or how you approached it?
Well, I think to Dan Erickson and Ben Stiller's credit, this is such a multi-protagonist story, and every character, if you've seen the whole series, the very first question of that Adam's character Mark asks Helly on the table is, "Who are you?" And I think every character is on a journey of discovering who they are in this new iteration of their life, whether it's becoming a mother or a new position in the management, or for Heliar, it's literally, who am I? I have no idea. If this is your first time seeing the show, you'll have to rewind and go back to the beginning. But Heliar wakes up on an office table having just done the Severance procedure, having no idea who she is or why she's there. And as an actor, it was a really fun challenge to not have a backstory and to be in that state of discovery, like we were as actors making the show. We were like, what is this show that we're making? What is this strange new world? The set design, the prop design, everything was like this art installation that we were investigating. And so I just kind of gave myself permission to be in a state of exploration and to have that hunger to discover who I am, which you all just saw, she finds out is her own worst enemy.
Right. Tremel, the character of Milchick, who you play, just has everything together, throughout the vast majority of the season, and it's really kind of, or it seems to, right? And then it's really in this last episode that everyone's just watched where it all kind of like comes falling down for him and he begins to lose it basically. How did you, with the directors, so there's 2 directors, right? There's Ben and Aoife were the 2 directors. Yes. On and off the season, okay, throughout the season. So how did you kind of calibrate Milchick's journey as far as like not having everything together as much as we would think he would?
Well, this show is so much about the facade, right? It's the appearance. And what I always like to say is that we started in chaos, I don't know how many people have seen it already, but we have a member who's missing and we can't find him. So that's our job as management to figure out, hey, where is this missing member? And also we have someone that we have to orient on their first day, and they're kind of a big deal. So I have to make sure that I don't mess that up in the process. So everything for me was about appearing to be cool, calm, and collected. But on the inside, there's always an engine running, and they always have to be in a state of readiness because, anything can happen.
Okay, so now I'm curious, who's seen the entire season? Okay, so now let me ask a question. This is not spoilery for anyone who's not seen the whole season. Okay, this is fascinating what you just said, because yes, to Milchick, Helly is a big deal. To us, we have no idea that she's a big deal until much later. So if I were to go back and watch the first few episodes, will I get a clue that Milchick and Patricia Arquette and everybody are fully aware of what a big deal she is?
Yeah.
It's there.
How?
We're really good.
When you pull her into the hallway in I think the first episode.
The stairwell scene? Yeah, that whole stairwell scene has a whole different meaning when you know that, this is Lumen royalty right here.
That's in episode 2, I think, when she comes onto the other side.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
the
right.
first episode is her in the loop, and the second episode is
Right.
when you're on the other side of the door.
Right. And there's also these little beautiful Easter eggs when I'm walking Helena into the room before she has her surgery. And, just kind of talk to her about her levels and how everything's going. And then we stop at the Kier poster, or the Kier monument, and then tell her about his favorite breakfast. And then one of the questions is asked is, what is his favorite breakfast? So it's like a little test of memory and how much are you recalling.
And just like everyone on this cast is so excellent and is approaching their character from such integrity. And Patricia would often, before a take, would give me this little look, and she would give me the insight into what she was thinking about Helena. She would be like, "You're really something." Right before the take, and then it would feed her the undercurrent of like, she's knowing who I am on the outside. But it was a little master class in like, what's the thought before?
What fun. What was it like the first time she did that? Were you like, oh, that was crazy?
Yeah, I was just like taking notes.
Adam, so explain, and I want to make sure that I'm getting this right for everybody here. I feel like this whole season was shot in a unique way because you guys were filming multiple episodes on each shooting day. You weren't just finishing episode 1 and then going on to the next. How jumbled and crazy was it, and what was that like for you as an actor and for your cast members?
Yeah, we shot the whole season at once, so it was just like a 9-hour movie. So sometimes there would be like in any scene from episode 2 in the morning, and then after lunch we'd do an outie scene from episode 7.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so we were like jumping all over the place. But it ended up, after a while we got used to it, and part of what ended up helping me with that was the elevator scene where we kind of switch really quickly, and Ben just kept this rig sort of off to the side of the set throughout the season. So whenever we had time, we would shoot a few of those things, the little transformations or whatever you want to call them, because we didn't know what it would be, and it could so easily be corny or stupid, and so we just wanted to do it over and over again, and eventually find it. And then eventually, like, we did some that were corny and stupid, and it kind of never felt right. And then Ben sort of suggested that, like, maybe flutter your eyes or something. But then also, it's just a camera move, and so it ended up being more of an internal shift than anything to go from one to the other. And that ended up really helping when we'd have to jump back and forth, because you really had to distill it down to just 1 second. And it was almost like a math problem that you would just have to do really quick and just sort of like empty your brain out of all of its memory and contents and just kind of try and find that essentially 2.5-year-old that's like lurking in there. And so I think, as a roundabout way, that ended up sort of assisting with both of the sides of the character.
Jen, given the fact that your character really kind of helps anchor the Audi scenes, and they are so different from everything at Lumen, they're fascinating to watch, and they're just different from anything I feel like I've seen before. What conversations did you have with Dan, who wrote it, and also Ben and Aoife, the directors, about like what the vibe should be for all of that world?
Yeah, that was sort of the nucleus of my daily panic attack, because Michael and I were like, I mean, we were so lucky with Adam and Patricia because they had a temp read on the other world. So we were constantly, probably selfishly, mining them. Like, does this feel rhythmically weird for the rest of the show? And eventually Ben and Aoife also, and Dan were just like, don't worry about that. Like, just, you just have to be in this world. And I think eventually we settled into that. And they certainly made it easy. I think the thing that was most important story-wise to me was just tracking how much this woman was caring for these two men in her life, and to try to find a boiling point for that. So by the end, which you see, she has no more. She has no more to give, and Adam made that really easy because all of my stuff, was about not wanting to wake the sleeping dragon, and I'm very close with my brother in real life, so it wasn't hard to imagine being that concerned for someone you love in that way. And I don't think we see like sibling relationships like this very often. I think it's often like romantic, or it's two best friends, and it was cool to dig in with that because there's an implied history with siblings that you don't have in any other dynamic, and so that helped, I think, push that along. I think I answered a different question.
That worked for me completely. Britt, so as we've alluded to, you had these two directors, Aoife McCardle and Ben Stiller, but there were days, because you were shooting in this interesting way, where you would be directed by like Ben in the morning and Aoife in the afternoon. Was that discombobulating, or was it just like, oh, that's just the way it is? Did they try to sync up their directing styles, or was it clear that they were doing different things?
Well, it's a super collaborative environment. Like this show, everyone is so obsessed with making it. It feels like such a team effort from every single department, and there's a lot of checking in that happens. Like I had a costume fitting the other day, and the hairstylist came up to make sure that the hair would fit with the costume, and just everyone is so attentive to detail. And so I think in that way, it's a really generous group of people. And for my own sake, like Adam was saying, we're shooting out of order. I'm a super visual person, so if I look at a bunch of scripts, I get sort of confused at like just looking at words. So for season 1, I drew little pictures on index cards of Helly's journey, and they're like, they're just like little cartoons of like me running down the hall and smashing through a window. And so I put that on my wall in the morning, and I could kind of locate where she was in her actions over the course of the season. And it just helped me to contextualize this really visual world that we're in, and a character on an emotional journey.
Would anyone else like Britt to do that for them?
Yes.
This sounds really helpful.
I would love to.
I actually have several pictures Britt has drawn me on my refrigerator. They weren't from the show, but they're beautiful doodles. I just want to give her some credit.
Tramel, my understanding is that episode 9 is meant to have a different feeling to it than the other 8. I've heard you describe it, Adam, almost like the action movie episode, of Severance, right? So on the days where you knew you were going to be shooting something from episode 9, was it like, oh, episode 9, like everyone be hyper aware that this is from 9, or how was it set apart?
Well, I was running for most of episode 9. Put my shoes on, just run down the hall, run back, run around.
You look amazing.
Thank you. No, I think what was really important for me is to just track the journey and keeping it ahead, and understanding that this was episode 9. This was the moment, right? Again, going back to Milchick's journey, when we started in chaos, and now we're trying to make sure that we keep the train on the track, and knowing that we have this big gala that's happening that I was not invited to. Yeah, I was down to
I always think
bullshit,
about
man.
that. I'm like, why is he not invited?
I had a nice suit and everything. But so everything was riding on this. It was like life or death, you know. And I remember Ben telling me, he was like, you know, so what are the stakes, man? I was like, this is everything. We have to make sure that this is right. And so when Cobell, because she's fired, she calls me and was like, listen, OTC, something has, you know, disrupted it. You gotta fix it. I'm like, oh, you gotta fix it. You gotta fix it because upstairs it's gonna go down, you know. So it's very high stakes. Yeah, very high stakes.
Isn't that crazy how this show builds these stakes out of thin air? Right? That's the greatest thing about it. That you're like, oh my God, who's gonna find out who this person is or this person is? It's out of nothing.
It's a delicately built house of. I remember when we were shooting this episode in Devin and Rickon's house. I remember the moment where I accidentally called Patricia Ms. Cobell.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were shooting that, I remember being there with Ben and Patricia and just being like, you guys, if we have them at this point, and that was the big question mark, like who knows, when you're making something, you have no idea if it's gonna work, or even if it does, if anyone will like it, but really, if at this point, episode 9, if it is going to be built to the point where people care that I say the wrong name, but if they do, this is going to be so much fun. And the first time we watched it, people heard kind of a gasp. It was so much fun.
That and the photograph.
And the photograph, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay, here's a question I want all of you to ask. Jen, I'm going to start with you, so sorry I'm putting you on the spot, but as if you haven't been asked this before, so please, you have an answer. For each of you, what is your favorite moment involving your character from the season? Either because you love how it turned out, or you loved actually doing it and filming it?
Oh man, I mean, I getting to build the relationship that Adam and I did was such a privilege because I had been a fan of Adam's for so long and we had never worked together before, so I secretly was just geeking the entire time. But also, he's just such an incredibly generous person and actor that getting to show up in a relationship that had to be immediately intimate, but we were coming off of like lockdown. And there was no, I mean, you know, we were still in masks and shields at that point. And if you got close to someone, because normally, you know, either you're having a weird day or a good day, you talk to each other. It's theater nerd camp, we always joke about. It's like when actors are together, we touch each other. You need to be able to like go get a drink after a hard day. But there was none of that. So we launched right in, and there was I think it was the first day I was working, there's a scene where Devin and Mark hug. And we hugged and we cut, and I was like, I have to pop around the corner because I realized I hadn't hugged anyone in like 3 months. And I said to Adam, I was like, you don't know me at all, but like I'm a little misty. And I was like, that's okay. But I think that was my favorite moment because it sort of set the tone for the rest of that relationship.
I love that. Tisha, how about you?
It's not as touching as that story. I just enjoyed like all of it because of my character. I mean, for those of you who haven't seen it, she's there and she's not there at the same time. So I enjoyed every moment. The thing that stands out was probably my first day on set though, and my character comes in at the end of a scene with Christopher Walken and John Turturro, and the camera had been there was a monitor on the other side of the door. So for the whole day, I basically got to see the two of them work together, and I felt like a little fly on the wall. I mean, I come in and I say one line, but it was such a wonderful experience that I couldn't believe that I had the opportunity to. It sounds weird, but to not be in the scene, but to watch them in the scene. It was a really great privilege, and it was my first day, so you know it stands out.
Amazing. Well,
That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say just listen. That's
okay.
fine. That's fine. I would have to say the moment that stands out for me was my first day as well. not the same. But in my first day, it was about October of 2020. I had not acted on camera in probably a year and a half. And I didn't even know if I could still do this. It's like, acting, what is this? We've been holed up for so long. And I was alone because my roommate was in Ukraine during the pandemic and he got shut down there. So I was like in this 3-bedroom apartment in New York by myself looking at the walls. So very limited human interaction. And my first scene was with John Turturro. And I was terrified and I couldn't remember the lines. I was having a panic attack and I remember, mini panic attack. And I remember Ben Stiller saying, all right, I got good news and I got bad news. Good news is we're gonna do it until we get it right. Bad news, we're gonna do it until we get it right. And that was such a relief for me because it took off so much pressure. And John was such a gentleman and was like, just breathe. It's okay. You got it. You know it. I was like, I'm messing up, John. It's fine. And that really set the tone for me for the entire, several months that we filmed. Just to breathe.
Well, you crushed it, so
Well, thank you.
great job. Britt?
Okay, so we had been in under fluorescent lighting for months in getting lost in hallways. There's a very meta part of this show where you're actually in a confusing space and get lost and are in a room with a eerily low ceiling. And so the day we got to do the music dance experience was so fun because not only did we discover that Trammell is the best dancer on the planet, but we also got to have disco lights and we got to move our hips and the characters were hearing music for the first time. I mean, that's what's crazy. They don't know art down there and all of a sudden they're hearing music. And it's like being like when you watch little kids dance, they're just like, I have hips. And like Adam's discovering his hips and we're in this like teenage dance together and we had this whole narrative that we were doing like across the room like, hey, you know. And it was literally fun to be on set and to just see this different side of all the characters and
Adam, how about you?
Jen and I were shooting a scene just the other day, and it was just so fun, and like she was saying, it was sort of a thing that was just sort of immediately just sort of emotionally full and really easy, and I feel that way every time I shoot a scene with Britt and Trammell and Deachin and Jen and everyone on the show, just how lucky I am to get to work with these because they're all just incredible. And I get to have these cool scenes. We all get to have these really fun, weird scenes together. But aside from that, my favorite moment of the season is just this quick moment with John Turturro and I in like the museum, the weird house museum. It's just this weird, quick little moment, but I remember doing it and being really kind of caught up in getting it right because John Turturro for me is one of my, like in high school, I would transcribe his scenes from Do the Right Thing and then do them in class. And John Turturro's this huge deal, and I waited a few months before I actually told him that, because when I started out in like 93, I remember it was the summer of 93, I was doing background work, and True Romance came out, so Patricia and Christopher Walken are in that, and John Turturro is not in True Romance, but John Turturro was one of my guys who was, after Do the Right Thing, he was doing incredible stuff, starting to get those Coen Brothers movies and just destroying. And so I remember when I was just starting out, just trying to piecemeal something together, thinking about those three in particular, no shit, those are three of my favorite people, and the fact that I got to end up in a show with all three of them, but also have these moments of John Turturro where I actually get to dig in and have confrontations with that guy. are crazy. So in that particular scene, I had a moment of, I can't believe this is actually happening.
That's so great. What a pleasure it is to see all of you, and congratulations on a great first season, and I cannot wait to see season 2, so congratulations.
Thanks, Dave.
One quick thing before you guys all get out. There's a reception right here, so we're just gonna let these 5 go get situated in the reception.